Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Musa Mpofu from WFTO. A press release statement published in September 2020 to launch the Build Back Fairer campaign read, the COVID-19 pandemic and its social distance and lockdown measures continue to have a heavy toll on the most vulnerable in our societies, including small businesses, producers, and workers. It has had devastating effects on mental health, human rights impacts, among others, putting at risk people's right to basic human needs such as food. In turn, poverty and hunger have led to increased crime, risk of forced and child labor and environmental degradation. The crisis has shown us not only how interdependent we all are, but also shown us the destruction of nature, deforestation, as well as climate and health crises. These are all interrelated and share in the exploitation of people and planet as a common root cause. Despite this, some companies have taken short-term measures to protect their own interests while jeopardizing human rights of those in their supply chains, for example, canceling orders, while at the same time paying large dividends to their shareholders and claiming government bailouts. There is growing awareness of the need for resilient supply chains. It is essential that governments put in place support measures to ensure small producers and workers are resilient against future crises. But this is not enough. Returning to business as usual after the pandemic would reinforce the inequalities and unsustainability of our current system. Instead, a transformation of the economy and governance of global supply chains is needed, not only in the interest of small producers and farmers, but also in the interest of the present and future generations. As we sit in April 2021 and outlook, it is still not very clear. COVID-19 itself is the result of humanity's destruction of nature. It has exacerbated the existing inequalities. The hardest hit have been the most vulnerable, including small farmers, small business owners, and workers in the global south. Businesses have had to retrench and in the worst cases have had to shut down altogether. Good morning. Welcome to a series of conversations where we engage with business owners and key economic stakeholders on a wide array of topics around all things sustainable and all things fair trade. On the panel today, I'm very happy to say I have three very knowledgeable, very switched on, very vibey women who are entrepreneurs within their own respect and have worked a lot of years in the various fields of society. First of all, I'd like to introduce Lilly, Lizl, Naude. She is a self-confessed homebody, a plant lover, a DIY enthusiast who heads up her design business called Loompa. She was born and raised in Paarl and started working in the NPO sector immediately after school, later joining the corporate environment. She did her PR training at Varsity College and is also graduated top of her class as an interior decorator at Inscape College. She's a self-taught designer and an innovator and lives by her motto, use what you have. Lizl has traversed rough terrain on her road to success. She and her family have been through turbulent financial times, having lost everything 4 times in the last 12 years. She and her products have been featured in several publications and makes regular appearances on television and advocates for greener living. Welcome, Lizl.
Thank you so much, Musa. It's such a privilege to be here with this amazing panel. I count myself honored.
Great stuff. Do you want to maybe just give us a line or two on what Loompa does?
Yes, so as you mentioned, just quickly, Lily was my nickname when I was younger as a child. And Loompa comes from the Oompa Loompa character from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So it's a
Oh,
fun name, and it speaks to the creativity that we apply in our business daily. And maybe we'll talk about it later. But as you mentioned, we lost everything a few times, and I needed to create income for myself. And waste was a means or is a means that I'm using to create opportunities for myself as well as the community. And we collect waste from, wine farms, from waste companies, from construction sites, and we create something that is beautiful and usable again, and that can actually be used in your home and add value to your life. And that's more or less in a nutshell what we do.
okay, great. Also on the panel this morning, we have Rudo Kumirai, the founding CEO of Helena Group of Schools. Rudo is a lawyer by profession and an educational entrepreneur. She has 11 years experience in banking and financial services and has worked in various senior management positions in Southern Africa, having served as the managing director of Microbank in Zambia and a corporate and legal advisor for Botswana IFSC. She is currently the vice chairperson to Empower Bank, a youth microbank. She is the founding CEO of a private educational group known as Helena Schools, which celebrated 11 years since its inception during 2020. Helena Schools has a preschool, primary school, and online international school. Rudo founded the first leadership development curriculum for preschool and primary school. She is involved in various youth mentorship programs for preteens and teenagers from orphaned and vulnerable backgrounds. Her goal is to use education to empower young and talented children to be equipped to lead the future. Welcome, Rudo.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Chibo, for having me here.
Okay, great. Do you want to tell us a bit about Helena Schools?
Sure. So Helena Schools is a small school in Zimri Park. By the way, I'm from Zimbabwe, and Helena Schools is based in Zimbabwe in an area called Rua in Zimri Park. And we started the schools in 2010. We have a preschool and a primary school as the physical schools there, and they really are trying to service the middle income families who would like to access the private school education, but don't quite have the kind of money that most private schools in Zimbabwe would charge. So we try to cost and price appropriately for them. And we combine a ZIMSEC curriculum, but our main thing is that we're a skills-based program. We look at building tomorrow's leaders using various skills that we incorporate in our curriculum. But that's our story in brief.
That's great. Good to have you, Rudo. And then finally, definitely not least, last but definitely not least, we have Wangari. Wangari is a freelance creative consultant with over 15 years experience of offering design solutions in California, Washington, D.C., and Nairobi. A design thinker and change maker driven by Pan-Africanist ideas, building sustainable economies and mindful living. She works to balance purpose with profit and use businesses as a force for good. She is always looking to expand her portfolio with projects with impact. Currently, she is at the helm of PEPERUKA, a social conscious lifestyle brand that weaves African stories and connects African cultures through unique products with powerful iconography and language. The product range, apparel and accessories, home decor and gift items, is urban, contemporary, and inspired by everyday life as a way to start conversations and share ideas. She is also a creative director of Black Butterfly Limited, a communications firm which offers powerful solutions that stimulate and push creativity. The capabilities of the firm include branding and corporate identity, among other things. She's worked with Coca-Cola Africa, Google Kenya, Barclays Kenya, and the government of Kenya. Welcome, Wangari.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana. It's really interesting to hear yourself being spoken of like that. Thank you very much, Musa, for that lovely introduction. I'll tell you a little bit about PEPERUKA. We are a company that really just celebrates who we are as Kenyans and as Africans, and we do it kind of unapologetically. We speak about things that matter to us on an everyday basis. We make T-shirts, home decor, mugs, things that we can use every day. And the idea being that we should be able to see ourselves in everyday items. While the mugs might be made in China, the graphics themselves should be, at least I think, speak to our story here in Kenya. And the idea is also that we start to craft these Pan-African stories and see what are the things that link us here in Nairobi to you, perhaps, Musa, in South Africa, to Lizl, and, to Rudo. So I'm really excited to be part of this conversation.
It's really great to have you all, ladies, and I'm looking forward to a jam-packed session in the next hour. And they say when women talk, we don't watch the time, but I'll be very sure to keep guard so that those who are watching us online, Facebook and YouTube, don't end up dropping us. So thank you so much to those watching on YouTube, on Facebook. Please remember to like and share, send us your comments, join in the conversation. Let us know what you think as the ladies share their stories of how they have managed to navigate around COVID. So yes, ladies, that's what it's about today. COVID, 2019, we were all out here strategically planning what we're doing for 2020. We were happy, yes, things are going to be great. Fast forward January 2020, we think everything's fine. We're watching China and looking at all those numbers and feeling like, okay, yeah, it's going to end over there. Here comes March 2020, gang, lockdown. So I think maybe let's start with Lilly. How did it happen for you? What did you have to do? Fast forward March 2020, June 2020, and here we are, April 2021.
Sure, just like you said, Musa, we always think, no, it happens to those people, it won't happen to us. So it really was the last thing on my mind, and it just opened my eyes to, just risk mitigation and, how I've been running my business, sort of oblivious to the greater external, happenings in the world, never thinking it will actually impact my small business in such a way. So as you said, I'm also a planner, and I used, the December, January period to do my planning. I had all these great, amazing projects planned for the year, and bam, lockdown happened. But as you mentioned in my introduction, I am a total homebody, and I went into this mode of just enjoying, being home. It was just such a welcome rest. And let's be honest, we all run our businesses and we're so passionate about what we do. But how much time do we actually take out for ourselves? So I've learned to not, throw my toys out of the cot over things that I cannot control. And I realized early on that during lockdown that this is something that is really out of my control. And what sort of gave me consolation was the fact that I wasn't the only one going through this. It almost gave me this sigh of relief, like all of us are going through this now. It's okay to not do anything. It's okay to rest. So that was my initial, I just received it with open arms. And although it was very traumatic, much later on in lockdown, when we started losing people, family members and so on, then it sort of changed a bit. For me, you start with the fears in your mind, you've got your business to run and all these things. But I also have some good news stories. I don't know if I can share them now or if we're going to touch on them later about what lockdown actually meant for my business. But in essence,
let us know.
Yeah. So as I said, homebody, in my element, doing DIY projects around the home. And in the afternoon, my family and I would just walk around the land because we live on a small holding. And there was a specific day that I saw this discarded piece of wood, and it was just lying on the ground. And for the first time I saw it. But in my design process, in my head, I've said this before, and people always laugh at me. The item that I see, the discarded item, almost says to me what it wants to be. And when I saw this piece of wood, it shouted to me, Africa. I want to be Africa, just make me into a piece of Africa. And I brought it home, and one day while we were, still in lockdown, I started cutting out the African map shape because I wanted to do a piece of art for my home, a personal piece of art. And it eventually organically morphed into what you see behind me. This is one of the products that eventually came about, but it wasn't planned because Africa Day is on the 25th of May, and the morning I got up and I thought, I need to post something about my beloved continent. And I grabbed the big frame and I took a picture and I posted it on social media, unknowingly about the response. And my phone started just going crazy. People wanted the product, but I still wasn't ready, in the production wise, and I wasn't sure about the future. But to cut a long story short, I started producing it about 2 months after I initially introduced it on that photo. And so the My Africa range became just our most popular range. So this is just one of the products. And My Africa lap desk also came about, and I feel it's so perfect for the time that we are in, because we are in a season, or I think a permanent season, of remote working. And it's a product that I brought to the market that I think is in season. But I need to mention that I don't think I would have come up with this idea if I wasn't in that quiet, restful space. So that is one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last year, that I need to be balanced as an entrepreneur. I need to take time out to rest. As hard as I work and hustle during the day, with my business, I need to seriously prioritize rest, because it's in those periods of rest that you get those brilliant ideas that the world needs, those solutions.
Yeah. Great story, Lizl. I'm glad out of COVID you managed to come up with a project range that is doing exceptionally well. I've heard a lot about the lap desk, and I think maybe I should get one for myself when I'm in Cape Town. I was talking to Tembi from Drakenstein Municipality, and she was letting me know how well so it's a lap desk that you can put on your bed and have your morning coffee and do your work on your laptop, that is in the shape of Africa, which I think is really great. Yes, if you can, give us the link to where we can see it on social media, get more people interested in it, get more people buying it, because I've heard, and I think I've seen a picture of it. It's really beautiful. Well done.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Musa.
Yeah. Rudo, how did you navigate this thing?
Very crazy time for us. So first of all, the context of 2020 was much like how you introduced it, Musa, that we were strategizing to celebrate our 10th year anniversary. And, when you've been in business for a long time, you're imagining that these milestones are like your big hitter years. And all your dreams of all those hours of hard work are going to finally come together in 2020. I mean, so we had big expectations for the year. And when January started, I remember one of our parents who's in the medical space came and said, oh, you've heard about the COVID thing. What are your plans to keep our children safe? And I scoffed it off. I mean, privately, of course, you never scoff at the parents. But, privately in my heart, I said, are you kidding me? It's in China and we're in Zimbabwe. How is So we carried on, really. We watched the world, but didn't think anything of how it might come and affect us. And I remember it was about March that, we started hearing the buzz coming into Zimbabwe. And we were about to close the term. And then suddenly, government announces that we're getting into a lockdown. And I must tell you that the first thought was a lot of trepidation. We didn't know what the lockdown would mean. We didn't know how long it was going to be for. But the first thought was, what does that mean to not the school side, but what does it mean to the income side? Because you're wearing both hats. You're wearing the hat of the person who must deliver a service to children in spite of being in lockdown, although that felt sort of like a shared problem. But your staff members, your bottom line, that's your problem. So, at the thought of the shutdown, we couldn't figure out what we were going to do in terms of the income side. But I think initially we thought it was going to be very short term. So we closed schools just before the normal school holiday time. And I think, like Lilly said, the initial response to the lockdown was, phew, let's rest. The bit that you can share with the rest of the world, a free holiday, let's go ahead and do that. So I think the first 2 weeks of the lockdown was really some good R&R time. A lot of eating, a lot of gaining of weight, a lot of discovering recipes again. So that was the nice part. But, it was kind of short-lived. The peace of mind was short-lived because as the payroll was coming up and you've got obligations, that sort of anxiety began to creep in and you're not sure what you're going to do and to navigate that. But all of the private schools in our space quickly went into online school. Okay. We had no idea what that was. I have to tell you that. Helena was a small private school that had no idea in terms of, how to get into the tech space. Everyone was talking Zoom, everyone was talking Google Teams, and those were foreign words to us. And you can imagine as the team leader, everyone is looking to you and you're sitting there thinking, hey, Shpa,
I don't know.
No. And you're completely unfamiliar with the tech space. I thought I was fairly tech suave, but hey, online and COVID and lockdown told me I am completely green. So everyone is looking for an online solution. And the one thing that we had going for us is that we've always been a tenacious school. We've always done things that other people are not necessarily willing to do. I guess it's because you're smaller, so you're more agile. So everybody went on to traditional online solutions, but we stumbled on this firm that was developing a platform solution. So they would custom make the platform for that particular school. That sounded fancy. It sounded just like what we needed to do. And so we went ahead, but I have to tell you that I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know how to say that. You were
okay.
Yeah, and I'm faking it to make it. I mean, these like online lessons, like trying to explain it to the team or to the parents. This is what we're gonna do, but you're completely clueless as you're doing it, by the way. So we come up with this platform that was going to deliver the lessons using the platform, and essentially. Traditional bigger schools that were wiser than Helena schools went with existing solutions. So whether it was Google Teams or Zoom, and they were they certainly appeared so ready to just like click this button and go digital immediately. We just followed blindly and went with our own solution. And like any tech journey, there was so much involved in that, so much learning on everybody's part. Learning on our part as the educators trying to deliver the solution, learning for the students, migrating from their physical school classroom to online school, for the parents. And we were learning in a space which was not ideal for our kind of school. We're a small school, we're in a small market, we serve a sort of middle income small family. Data is a big issue. Connectivity is a big issue. Access to correct devices. So if you're a big school, every child has a device. It was literally just handing them the tablet that they'd been playing games with and then telling them to go back to school. But for us, the teachers don't have appropriate devices, let alone the children. The children, if they do, they're sharing. They're using data on their phone and it's expensive. And so you're in a Zoom lesson and you suddenly freeze. And so it was a very difficult transition. It was a better alternative to not having school at all, but it wasn't easy. it wasn't easy to overcome the tech element. And now you've got devices, now you're delivering the lessons, but how do you deliver a relevant lesson to a 2-year-old looking at a screen? How do you keep them engaged? So yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was difficult. So the teachers had to transition into how to keep children engaged online learning versus physical learning. We were dealing with the tech challenges of going our own route of developing our own platform. And so there were so many tech glitches. It was so frustrating. I remember in about September, that would be about our second term, toward the end of our second term of online. We just came to a complete crash where the platform stopped behaving. The parents were exhausted. The teachers didn't know what to do. And, where you are supposed to be celebrating the best 10th year anniversary of your business, you were sort of threatened with, viability and survival, because you're dealing now with parents who don't get the online thing. It's not quite working. We've been in lockdown for a long time. So financially, they're not even able to keep paying the school fees. How do you justify the same school fees when you're doing online to physical school, but the costs are the same? If you had rent, the rent is still waiting for you. The bills are still waiting for you, the data. So, wow, I can tell you that our survival was threatened there. And it's an oxymoron to say when you're expecting to celebrate incredible success, you are probably at the brink of closure. And I think that's where we were in about the second term. It was scary times. But the lessons of 10 years, I think like what Lizzie said, when you've been through a season of ups and downs in the entrepreneurial journey, you recognize that down. And whereas I think the first time it would have happened, you'd have been quite shaken by it. We were able to say, no, we've been here before and we can get up from here. And that resilience, starts being dividend. Because even though it was difficult, my team was able to just buckle down, and they realized we're going through a difficult season. We need to, be a little bit strict with ourselves and manage our costs, but we're going to get through it. And so that gradual unwinding helped us to begin to take advantage of some of those cost savings. So no more fuel because you're not tracking to school anymore. You're able to negotiate some of the rentals down, and then prioritize things like the data and the salaries for your staff members. And that sort of began to get more stable. And the more buy-in we got from parents, more and more of our parents began to come back online. So the most children came back online, the better it was. And by the time we were now January 2021, we had almost 95% subscription on the online platform. The teachers were seamless. Yeah, it was great. I mean, you'd be so proud of how seamless our teachers then just adjusted to this new normal. So you've got teachers typing homework and children sending pictures back and forth. So everybody adjusted quite well. We had preschoolers who began to recognize each other from the online classes. I thought that was the biggest. Preschoolers can't do online learning, but after a couple of months, they get onto the Zoom by themselves. Send mom away, mom, go away. They to be in a class of their own. So that was really great. And I think, like he says, the journey not only brought about our adjustment to online, but the opportunity to then begin to develop an online school as a standalone. Because we realized online allowed us to reach a bigger market. When we were doing online, we got inquiries from parents who live away from the school in Zimbabwe, but also parents outside of Zimbabwe. And so that kind of made us think, well, isn't there an opportunity to remove the borders of physical school and leverage against the fact that online gives you access to everybody? And if you can make your educational offering relevant to everyone, then maybe you've got the first seamless international classroom that you can come up with. So, herein lies the new opportunity that we're working on, which is the online school. That's not just going to be for our parents, but parents within a broader market. We hope we can get parents from all over Africa to get involved in our classroom, enjoy a truly international space, which is what's relevant to our children, I think. So here we are.
Well done, Rudo. I mean, I think it's precious to be able to find a gap in a very hectic time and take advantage of it, and build something out of the horridness of the situation, and create a product or a service in your case that is able to address the needs of the market and continue what it is that you're trying to build. So well done to Helena Schools, and we hope to see a lot more in terms of the growth of the international platform for the school. Wangari, how was your journey? What happened with you?
So very much like the other ladies, I mean, 2020 was our year. This was the year that we were going to be big. This was the year we were going to be across the nation. We were going to be in airports. We were going to do big things. And then, so usually we have a Christmas party in December. And December is our busy period. So we decided, we'll push it to the following year. So December 2019, we didn't have a Christmas party. Then we pushed it, and we're like, okay, March is here. We must have it before the quarter ends. So we had a party. We celebrated. We're like, yes, this is going to be a great year. And then my birthday came up. I was off to the coast, because we were set. We were good for the year. And then you start hearing these stories and like, no, it surely cannot be. It should. And then you start hearing, the airport might be locked down. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm on holiday? Like, no. And so I rushed back to Nairobi, and I go to the office, and I'm just seeing my team just completely devastated. Like, everybody else in the building had moved out. I was on the beach having a good time, thinking it will blow over. And so very quickly, we just closed everything. I moved the shop. We had a retail shop, moved it to my house. And then, unlike Rudo and Lilly, I refused to close. I refused to slow down. I was like, what do you mean? I have stock in one of my bedrooms. We must sell it. And so I didn't stop at all. We just kept going, and we just kind of figured out how to sell, which was quite a challenge because, we sell statement T-shirts. Nobody is thinking about, kind of their identities and these wonderful external things. You're just trying to survive, right? So, trying to get people to be interested again in the items that we were selling was a bit of a marketing challenge. And then mentally, because I started this business from my home, going back home was just such a mental, it felt like I was really going backwards. But I learned to just let that go and to be actually thankful that I did have a place for the shop to move to. And then we had to also figure out, okay, so what does a shop look like when people are working from home? So we have the operations person in her house. I'm in my house with some of the items, and then we've got a salesperson. And we really had to think about process. And what does this business actually need? Which people does it need? What kind of paperwork do we keep for checks and balances? And that really showed us what the heart of where the business was. We did have to let go of people down the road, which was, letting go of staff is always difficult. But it actually showed us that we were doing things kind of redundantly. We had so much paperwork. We were actually very input-based rather than output-based. And then we would have long meetings for nothing. And now we kind of just had to shift to having 10-minute check-ins every day. So the team dynamic also shifted quite a bit. I had to understand what their home's setup was going to be like. And if they're going to be working from home, do you have electricity? Do you have a desk? Do you have what time with you? So going and finding these little MiFis that that you can kind of go around. I had to set everybody up with a printer. So it was kind of getting to know the team a little bit more intimately than we had ever planned. And then obviously because everybody was holding on to cash, all our credit terms went out the window. So, you have to pay for things up front. So it really forced us to think about how we're doing our production. So we would do things maybe every month and do big productions. And then so during last year, we had to think, okay, so can we do pre-orders rather than just saying, here are things? Can we do smaller cycles? What else can we do to kind of just keep the doors open? And we did, thankfully. So I didn't stop. I fought it the entire time. I was like, we're not closing, we're not resting, we're going, we're going. And here we are. Now is the time we're kind of a little bit stable. We're looking at a physical space that we will now open into, hopefully in the next month or so. Looking at different markets. So if Kenyans are not particularly cash fluid, can we think about different markets? Because people are now shopping online, and so expectations are a little bit different. So that's what we did. So we've shifted to a more online model and then expanding from just Nairobi and figuring out how can we get things to Kenyans outside of Kenya and then Africans on top of that.
Well done, Wangari. I mean, the key to success in life is endurance. You need to be able to endure. So I from all your stories, I pick up a thread in that. I mean, yes, there were hard times, and we had to sort of figure out how we survive in those hard times. I just want to talk about the reality of having to look at the people, in this case, the guys who you work with, aspect of COVID, because stuff has closed down. Businesses are not operating. Everyone is at home. Those who can do online are doing online, but it's still very slow. And so now, how did you guys navigate? I have to pay wages. I need to be able to sustain myself. I need to be able to provide some form of sustainability for my staff. And in some cases, unfortunately, some people had to retrench. Some people had to let some people go. And that's not always the easiest thing. I mean, especially if you've worked years with someone and then suddenly you have to tell them that, unfortunately, I can't afford to keep you anymore. I mean, that's the horrible side of COVID. That then suddenly someone's line of livelihood is lost. So how did you manage to navigate that? I can start with you, Wangari. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So our team was relatively small and still remains relatively small. So we had a small team of we were 4 full-time, and then we had about maybe 5 to 6 part-timers who come on an as-needed basis. And quite early into the pandemic, one of our team members, he went home outside of Nairobi. He went home and he just rethought his whole life and said, you know what? I actually don't want to be doing marketing anymore. I want to do the family business. And so he left. And so that kind of was like a bit of a relief for me because I didn't have to release him. But it caused us to actually think, okay, so what actually matters? Yeah. And that was the thread throughout 2020. What actually matters in terms of the way that we do business? And then one other team member, it just stopped being practical because her role was to receive stock, to count things and to do all that. And if it's not happening, it can't happen at her house. It was happening at mine. She can't come to my house. I realized that I can do it as I'm doing other things. And so somewhere in there, we like maybe about halfway through the year, we actually just closed that position, which was very difficult because it meant I was doing a lot more than I wanted to, and so my days were very, very long. But it meant that we became quite smart about how we're doing things because I don't want to spend my days counting T-shirts as well. So I'm like, okay, so how do we do this in a cleverer way? And then we maintain the staff, the sales team, because you can generate sales wherever you are. And I think we'll actually keep that model of being pretty flexible about working and being more deliverable based rather than you must come to the office and show your face from 9 to 5. I mean, that stopped being particularly useful or relevant. So so in terms of in our internal team, that's how we managed it. And then with our suppliers, our supply chain, we just kept talking to them and just reassuring them that, if and when business comes up, that, they will still be part of our external team. And the minute we got business or a little bit of money to do a few more production lines, we kept the same suppliers and paid them up front because, cash is king, or more important than king, right? And so, and we were very deliberate about, making payments on time as much as possible. Made as much, wherever we could, we paid down our debt. Just to be sure that, what I was feeling, everybody else was feeling it. And I am coming from a place of privilege. And so just to be very conscious about everybody else and their positions. So that's kind of how we dealt with it.
Yeah. And for you, Rudo, what was that like? Especially with like your kids having relationship with the teachers and all of that, and behind the scenes stuff. What does that look like?
So lucky enough, we didn't lose any of our staff members. I think that's an amazing thing. And we managed to retain all our staff members during that time. At first, what we did was, because of the shrinking income, we just reduced everybody's salaries right across the board. But what that did in the first time we launched the online is people need to survive. So you had online teachers who would post to work at 8 o'clock, and then they're off to wherever it is that they're going to go look for an alternative source of income. Remember, you now can't control their time. And we sort of thought it's a fair enough compromise because we're not able to give them what they was used to. And so if they're supplementing their income somewhere else, that's fine. But then it affects the output because you've got teachers, children would want to speak to their teachers, or you'd want to modify and have more one-on-one sessions, smaller Zoom lessons, so more frequent during the day and so forth, but the teacher's not available. So I think that allowed us in the second phase to be honest with our parents and say, in order to deliver an effective service to you, we need our teachers. And we did a budget that we shared with all our parents and said, we've stripped away all the whistles and the frills and the bells, but we need to pay our teachers and pay them in full so that we can be in control of their days and we can have them available to you throughout a normal teaching day to be able to deliver a service. And that worked. Because then when we did it the second time, like from this year and onwards, they were on their full salary as if nothing was happening, no difference between online and suddenly you are then more available to be able to extract more value from them. So that was great. Our support staff, we also tried to reallocate them. So where you've got a driver, but there's no school bus to drive because we are in lockdown, we had other school projects that we put money into and allowed them to run those projects. So we have a school garden that the children used to run during the school term. And so we just reallocated their resources and said, you guys look after the garden and you make sales, and then those sales are what will supplement your income. So just trying to allocate them to other support services within the school system that would provide additional income. And that sort of helped. It was difficult. I think there was a lot of understanding on their part, a lot of conversations to reassure everybody that we're going to all do our best to look after everybody. Do the best way that we can. It wasn't always perfect, but I think the best way that we could do that. And I think that conversations between not just the school and the staff, but including the parents in that conversation, I think reassured everybody that we need to just buckle up. It's a difficult season, but we'll get through it. And so, now everybody's fine, I think.
Okay. Before I come to you, Lilly, I just want to invite guys who are watching to give us your comments. Let us know how you navigated around this. What were your challenges? What happened with you? Thank you for those who are tuned in right now. I see there's Kutsai Chihota. He says good vibes from YouTube. There's also trading for development. They say, hi from Oxford. Sorry, I'm late. Will this be recorded? Yes, it is being recorded and you'll be able to watch it off our YouTube platform. But I think we should have also a recording of it on our Facebook platform. Please continue sending us your comments. Tell us what COVID has been like for you. So Lilly, what was it like for you?
I think of everybody, I've got the smallest internal team. It was mostly myself and I. I had an assistant, and his contract actually expired just before lockdown. So, it wasn't like I had to let him go or anything, because most of the work that I do is outsourced to other companies. And because I decided to actually take a rest, take a break, and not market my business, it sort of just worked out well. Now, let me mention that pre-COVID, my main target audience was the tourist, visiting South Africa, visiting Cape Town. And when COVID happened, the tourists disappeared, and I needed to somehow get the attention of the local client. And it just worked out so well that towards the end of 2019, I had a few on-screen interviews, and they aired in early 2020. And what happened was those TV channels, they needed content to recycle during lockdown because they weren't allowed to shoot. So they ended up playing my content over and over and over, like at least 20, 30 times. And I would get these locals, strangers, contacting me saying, oh, we saw you on TV. We love what you do. How can we buy the products? So it sort of awakened the locals, South Africans, to Lilly Loompa and to what I was doing. Because in general, my products were not received as favorably as the Europeans and the Americans usually do, because they are, sustainability and green living is much more important to them than it usually is for us, because we're a little bit slower to catch on. So that was a real blessing for me. So I ended up slowly but surely once the courier services opened, I started sending my products to the locals who ended up buying. But I think, I don't want to sound philosophical, but in my case, I think two fears, pop up. It's the fear of obviously losing your life to a pandemic or to a disease or like COVID. And then secondly, the other fear is losing everything. And I think because I've literally been there so many times, I wasn't phased or frightened about the fact that I could lose this business, or my family and I could lose everything, because it sort of felt so familiar and I felt like I was ready to deal with it. So I've learned to live with very little over the years. So it was definitely an adjustment, because, for instance, my husband's business actually reached, a very high peak just before lockdown, and we were set to have a brilliant year with his business. He's also got an online business, and then all of a sudden, because of lockdown, he had to halt everything. So that definitely had an effect on our overall income. But at least the pressure wasn't there for me to pay salaries, because it was just for myself that I had to look out for. But it also made me think about, like you said, my supply chain and who I actually use within my business, the kind of businesses that I deal with and how they dealt with things. Because I remember I visited one of my the companies that I outsource work to, and I remember the fear and the stress on this person's face, and it's not something that I want to see again, because we are real people, we have real livelihoods, and we need to take care of our kids and our families. And so that's sort of my journey. Quite a small team still. I still have my assistant, but I get him on board as I need, because the pandemic has impacted everybody's business in that way. But also, let me tell you, I forgot to tell you earlier. So everybody used to say to me over the years, you should actually ask government to help you. There's funding of stuff available. But I was like, no, guys, I would rather not because of the red tape and my previous experiences. But then a friend of mine, Eddie, he convinced me. He said, listen here, Lizl, what do you have to lose? You are at home. You've got all the time in the world. Why don't you apply for these opportunities that are available? And I actually took the time. And sometimes it is frustrating dealing with the applications and having all your papers in order and so forth. But I did it, and I was successful in quite a few.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was very welcome. Those have been able to pay myself a salary, and I got my assistant back earlier this year. I ended up, being able to pay him again for a few months. So yeah, that's also something that I'm happy that I took the advice of my friend. And not every opportunity will work out. So I need to just not have such high expectations, because
That's true.
I had a big disappointment where I applied for one of these opportunities. I got the funding, and just 3/4 through the project time, the funder just decided not to pay the last payment. So that has really impacted me very negatively, and that was about 2 months ago. So as I said, you need to open yourself and be ready for that disappointment, because it doesn't always work out, because this was all COVID money. This was part of the COVID relief money that was, given. So yeah, that's more or less my story.
Yeah, so I just want to find out. So in South Africa, I mean, government policies post-COVID and government rollout plans of how to build back involved a lot of giving out of money for those guys who don't work, the youth, guys who've lost their jobs. In some cases, people got their money. In some cases, people didn't get their money. But that's not what we're trying to talk about. So I just want to know how have government policies helped you guys, or their rollouts in terms of dealing with COVID resilience and all of that? How have their rollouts helped your business specifically? Is there anything that the government has done that has assisted your business in terms of building back post or in a later wave of COVID? Because I don't think it's right to say post-COVID. COVID is still here.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah. So in the dip, because I feel like we're in a dip. For Kenya, I know you guys are in a peak right now, but for us on the southern tip, it's a dip. So for you guys, did government help? Do you feel like you had sufficient help? Rudo?
Well, let me say government policies did try and help. I know one of the things that we could have benefited from was a policy to put a delay in rentals, for commercial rentals, for any business that was renting out a commercial property. So that was a useful thing to create a conversation with some of our landlords, because at the time we were renting out 2 commercial properties. But because those were individuals and not corporates, it was very difficult to say to an individual that's their source of income, that just because the government has said this for me, we'll get that benefit, but forget you and your family. So we sort of appreciated it, because it allowed them to be more lenient to us as we discussed things like, oh, we can't pay all your rental at once, but can we have sort of payment arrangements? But we still, didn't take up that offer to have the rent completely cancelled, and we still went ahead and made payments toward that. And in Zimbabwe, I think we sort of took the view that said the government can only do so much, and they're probably going to be focusing on the most vulnerable. And as a business owner, perhaps our contribution was to at least look after our vulnerable to the extent that we could, and alleviate them on the long list of whoever else was going to benefit. And I know, so it was just that acknowledgement that they're doing what they can, and that will probably prioritize people who are a little bit outside of our business. And I think it was sort of trying to contribute actually to those efforts, as much as we could than being, in a queue that we knew probably would not be able to get to us because of those limited resources. Yeah.
And in Kenya?
In Kenya, we did have a few concessions. So there was a reduction in VAT, there was a reduction in pay, and there's also a reduction in corporate tax. So it was good, and it was quite helpful in the whole of last year. But then in 2021, it went back up, and then additional taxes were added, and so it's almost like, but COVID didn't end, so it was quite short lived, and we're still, hoping that they hear. But what I did find hopeful was the conversation between Kenyans. So the conversation between landlords and tenants.
Yes.
Seems to be quite human. Yeah, I think if anything COVID taught us is to go back to that thing that makes us human. And so that was the thing that government did what it did, and it will do what it will continue to do. But for us to just kind of remain human and see each other as that, and not just as you owe me and I owe you, that kind of arrangement.
And I think that's the beauty of the Build Back Fairer campaign. It's calling us to be more humanistic about everything, and to not really be, profit, bottom line, how it goes, but to really think about the people behind the process. For you to be able to have a conversation with your landlord to say, listen, right now things are a bit strapped. Instead of paying the full amount, can I pay you so much? Because I understand that this is your livelihood as well. This is how you're making money. So I feel like it has caused us to look at the human side of things, But now I would then question. I know here we're really dealing with small businesses, but I want to just pick your brains in terms of how would we call on corporates to build back better? Corporate Zimbabwe, corporate South Africa, corporate Kenya, having seen COVID and all of that, because most of the times you find that the processes of building back fairer and building back better are easier for small businesses because it's easy to manage. I mean, everyone is pretty much within your reach, You have personal relationships with all these people. But in terms of corporate, you're talking about large corporates with 1,000 staff, and they have stakeholders who want dividends at the end of the year, and they really don't care what's going on and all of that. And I'm just picking your brain here. How do we go about that? How do we navigate? How do we motivate larger corporates to adopt a Build Back Fairer concept? Lizl?
Yeah, like you said, I think when we think corporate, we just think impersonal. First of all, we, like you said, we know each other. We talk to each other. We have conversations, but it's so daunting to connect with corporates. So, firstly, something that has been coming up in my business quite a lot is just the ethical side of doing business. What is actually fueling you? We can answer this very differently as to what a corporate will, because corporates are just so difficult to navigate. It's just numbers, and I can just imagine what a nightmare it was to actually run a corporate and go into lockdown and managing all these people's and livelihoods. For us, it's so much easier. So for me, first of all, if corporates can just start being more or operating in a more ethical manner, just basic integrity, basic honesty. Because I found lately that your word doesn't seem to be your honor. 200 years ago, our forefathers did business with a handshake. Now we all back with contracts, and we bogged down with all this red tape. It makes it so difficult to deal with, and we know we have to have systems and things in place. But for me, let's just start with your word. If you as a corporate, if I have been in business with you, I've been dealing with you, and you've promised me certain things, just try and stick to that, because it will hit me as a small business so much harder if you go against your word. And I have literally experienced that, and just a cold email to say, hi, I'm sorry, I can't help you in this area anymore. I know I promised you this, but X, Y, and Z. Just a cold email. Just call me. Just I'm a person. Speak to me. Like I would do to the next person. And then corporate South Africa needs to buy local. They need to support local. I've been constantly trying to connect with corporates, but it's just such a mission that you end up just saying, listen, I'm not interested anymore. This is just too difficult. And I don't have the luxury of spending months and months trying to, kindle or rekindle a relationship with a corporate, because I think they might order from me. But I think what we have to offer is so brilliant. And what we have to offer is a story. We're not just any businesses, All of us have a story. We have a fountain in here of how our businesses started. It's not just a willy-nilly thing that we do. We are people with heart, and our products have a story that accompanies it, and it's got so much more value than buying from China or buying from all these mass companies. And we've got value to offer. So that's my message to corporate. And you do get the good ones, and I try to just connect with them, because it's about the tick boxes. Are our values aligned? I don't want to do business with companies that don't share the same value system that I do, because it's just gonna irritate the relationship. And I believe with shared values, that's how we're gonna grow South Africa.
Yeah, I think it's very necessary that we push the promote local, buy local. I mean, use local where and as much as you can, because when you're promoting local, you are actually your brother's keeper. I remember having said that in a campaign that we had last year, that if you're trying to ensure that your brother has a job, that your brother has an income, and I don't mean your actual brother, but I mean someone who lives around you, then you should promote local. If you're trying to make sure that you're growing the Zimbabwean economy or whatever, why not use a school that the owners are from here? And as the school, are you guys buying local or are you guys buying China? I feel like we are all interdependent on each other. We need each other to survive.
True.
Can I throw it to you, Rudo? What do you think corporate could build back fairer?
So my experience with the corporates that we dealt with during the season is that actually they were quite humane. I think it's because for the first time, the human issues were affecting even them and their families. And by them, I mean the CEO of any corporate is a human being. And because him and his family are also in lockdown, his children are also going to school, and he's had to also shrink his income or his wife's income. It became a more personal conversation, and I found many of the decisions, either in the corporate entities that I sit on as a board member, were quite human-centric, trying not to rush to retrenchment as the first option, where they can, to try and delay that as much as possible. And I think it's because it got a personal face. As to what to do going forward, I think there's a big opportunity that we're all seeing with digital business. And there are costs we can get rid of as we adjust to the digital space. So rentals, probably, I know I'm a part of another firm that actually moved out of a huge rental property into a smaller one, and that allowed them to prioritize salaries during that time. And, even as lockdown ended, the conversations of, do we still need to go back into that big glamorous space, or should we maintain the space and use the saving and the resources to prioritize? So I think digital is definitely a big opportunity. Worry with digital is, unless we also prepare our human resource to adjust to the new demand. There could be loss of jobs because as we of teller in place of a machine and so forth, there could be that loss in the jobs. But I think the responsibility is on all of us now, not just the big corporates, to adjust our skill set for that digital space. So it's no longer necessary for you to contribute your manual labor in terms of typing, etc. But if you go and get more adjusted in the digital space, and you now have more digital skills to be able to do your work online and sending emails instead of physical conversations. They're looking at soft skills. That's the conversation these days that everybody wants. Soft skills, because the hard ones can be done by a machine. So I think we do that and start the conversations in our small corporates and large corporates. I think we are preparing the human resource to adjust the new normal, because I don't think it's going away. And this online digital thing is actually a migration toward a new way of doing business. And so I hope that the human resource will catch up. And I think that's where I would give our big corporates the go-ahead to focus on.
It's funny that just before COVID, there was a big talk about everyone having to navigate what was it, to 5G or to 4G? Please correct me. I can't remember. But there was a whole technological talk about we need to become more technological in what we're doing, but everyone was so reluctant to do it because it was like, no, we're not there yet. There's the whole structural inertia. I'm happy doing the way I do what I do and all of that. Then COVID, and it's like, okay, we're all now going to Zoom. We are all now going to go on Teams, whether you like it or you like it a lot. This is what is happening. So yeah, it's the reality. You need to upskill yourself constantly and make sure that you remain relevant, so that you don't easily become a not necessary in any entity. Wangari?
So here in Nairobi, at least, we're lucky that there is kind of a growing movement or push towards buying local. So corporates tend to support small businesses, at least in my world. But I think what COVID has forced us to do is to have kind of global conversations, and so it's no longer a nice to have to do business ethically, because globally that conversation is happening. And so I think 2020 we were faced with like this collectiveness as the world, really, like there was this collective unknown at the very beginning, like these masks, Musa, as you were speaking before the call started, these masks, who's making them? Are they good? Are they bad? 3-ply, 2-ply, all of these things. And then, the places that we tend to look at for this kind of knowledge, you're looking at the US, and then you look at the US and you're like, they don't know what they're doing. And so, maybe we look somewhere else. And so there's this collective unknown, and nobody really knows where we are, right? Before it would have appeared that, Europe knows more than us in Africa. And then you look at like, they actually, perhaps they don't. And then there was this collective, I suppose, boredom or angst as well. There are these people who, they were all making banana bread. And then there's these people who all they could do is just sleep. And then the two are worried about each other. And this was, whether you're in Nairobi or you're in Johannesburg or you're in Melbourne, it kind of seemed like we were having this collective experience. And then there was this, if you remember, the earth started breathing again, right? We were all so happy. Oh, there's no pollution and the rivers are flowing. And then there was this collective, I think also collective reckoning about what matters. And you start seeing all these protests happening in the US, and then people starting to speak about mental health. So I think there's a thing that has shifted globally, and it is no longer a nice to have to think about ethical matters. It just is, though. It is becoming the norm. And I think things like World Trade, WFTO and B Corp and all these other organizations that give us a process to kind of measure to measure values, I think will become more and more the norm. And it will be, and for us as kind of developing brands and as developing nations, if that is still a correct term, we will have to start thinking about ourselves in that global sense.
Yeah.
And we will have to do business in a way that works for a global conversation. And so if I'm looking to sell my things in New York, New Yorkers are looking at the value chain. They're interested in who actually stitched my t-shirt. Where does the content come from? And so if that's the market that I want to enter, and I surely do, and most smaller businesses will want to enter those markets, you're going to have to think about those things. And so it stops being a nice to have, and I'm no longer noble for doing this, and like it's nice. It is now just, it becomes the base for how we operate.
That's very true. That is very true. Okay, ladies, so we were supposed to chat for an hour, and I've just looked at the clock. We've been going. So I think maybe just as a parting shot, your last words of encouragement, because I know there's a lot of business owners out there who, really don't know, where do I go from here? What do I do? How can I change? What can I adopt? What can I put what with what so that it works, what's your words of advice? I mean, we've all learned something. What do you want to leave our listeners with? How do I build back better? How do I build back fairer? How do I make it work? What should I do? It's not working right now. How do I fix it? Lilly? Okay, sorry, go ahead, Rudo. Go ahead.
Well, okay, I would say there is huge opportunity. If we borrow from what Lilly said at the beginning of the conversation to say, use the quiet to get into yourself and brainstorm and think. I think I've seen, not just in my own story, but in so many people around me, people are using COVID to blossom, to, dig deep and come back with all those ideas that they've been hiding or delaying for a later time in their lives. And so use that quiet to find your new rhythm as you come out of it. But also the biggest thing for me and the biggest excitement is, wow, the market has opened up. Again, what Wanjiro just said, to say we are now in a global market. So suddenly, truly, the opportunity is not just in your neighborhood or your country. We are now talking about a truly global market. And the bigger the market, the better opportunities, isn't it? That the big conglomerates are huge because they sell 1 million things for $1 a day, because there's 1 million people willing to buy their product. So suddenly, if you are selling something to a bigger global market, the opportunity to scale up and to grow your business is much more. And I think take advantage of the removal of those borders, because the digital space has no borders. Here we are in an international conversation, speaking with ladies from all across the continent, and no visa was required to get in there. I don't know how Musa found us, but found some borderless way of connecting us because of this space. It's an incredible, and my advice is for everybody to take advantage of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Rudo. Those are really good pebbles. Lilly?
Okay. I just want everybody to know that you've got something to offer. You've got something to offer to this world, and the world needs solutions. So we need to focus, we need to put our thinking caps on, and like Rudo said, there are so many opportunities, but let me warn you, don't just jump on any bandwagon. Know your why. Know why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't have that inner conviction of what you're doing, there will be so many tough days. And then you will be so tempted to give up, because it's not something that is, fueling you from the inside. So those are the kind of things that have been, fueling me in my instance. I know that what I'm doing is part of my purpose. Wangari mentioned it earlier, and my business is also one of being purposeful. And it's so important, because I think sometimes the bad days outweigh the good ones. because there are challenges every day. So if I'm just going to give up tomorrow, then, you know, my whole family will be impacted. So what I'm doing and what I'm building is I want to build something with longevity, you know, that is generational, that will be passed on, that I want to leave a legacy. And the third one actually is something to do with my Africa range. So while I was developing the lab desk, I was sitting behind it and I looked at the continent as a whole, and I asked myself that the question came up: is the work that I'm doing benefiting the continent? Is the work that I'm doing benefiting Africa? Or what is fueling me? Is it greed that's fueling me? Am I willing to take shortcuts to actually do business? And how is it impacting the continent? So it's sort of a tagline that I'm trying to bring into my marketing to create an awareness of every day that we are, you know, living on this continent. Is what I'm doing making a difference in a positive way? So those are my words of advice.
Wow, thank you so much, Lilly. And Wangari, your parting shots.
I think I would offer this. I would say continue to find ways to pause. You know, COVID forced us to pause and rethink. And so, and there was value in pausing and rethinking and looking at what really matters. And so to continue to find ways to continuously pause, reflect, and adjust and in your business and create a process that allows for that within your businesses. But I also think you must be grounded in things that matter to you. Because income will come and go, government policies will shift, and if you're not grounded in something that is bigger than profit, if you're not grounded in something that is bigger than even yourself, then you can find yourself quite lost and frustrated. So I would say find that which matters to you and really sink into that. And that will require a lot of bravery. And so take courage. It is the journey of an entrepreneur to be brave, and that is the journey. But it is also, I think, an opportunity to kind of have fun. And I think in this reflection, you know, the thing that I decided I was going to do is I'm not going to take myself so seriously. You know, I mean, who knows what 2022 is going to be? So if we're here with continual angst, it's going to be a really long year. So as much as possible, ground yourself in having some fun, finding where your joy is. And make some cool products along the way and amuse people and bring people along with you. Think about everybody that's making your things. How can you impact them? And I think of the products that we make. I mean, this T-shirt is made by so many hands that if everybody kind of infused their own joy and love into it, by the time you're wearing it, I mean, you're good to go. So that would be my parting shot.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Just to see what's happening on social media, we have Tsungai Makarao. She says, really great conversation. Tembi Dure says, thoroughly enjoyed this. Trading for Development says, so much wisdom. Felix Kumirai says, powerful takeaways. Thank you, guys. It's really been great. I just want to highlight something that was mentioned in the Build Back Fairer statement that I mentioned earlier. So in the press release I mentioned at the beginning, among other things, there was a call for governments to move to trade policies that undermine sustainability objectives, to fair trade policies that incentivize fair trade and sustainable trade and disincentivize trade based on cheap products. Move from growing inequalities to a reduction of inequalities, both between South and North, rich and poor, men and women, small producers and large corporates, move from short-term solutions that close off borders based on fear to a fair interdependence between countries based on fair trade terms, move from corporate capture and individual interests influencing policies to constructed public policies that shape the market to ensure that it works for the people and the planet. So I think my biggest takeaway out of all of this is that, yes, COVID has been the worst, but there were gems that we got out of it. It forced us to think differently. It forced us to adopt different ways of doing things, especially with technology. And I think as we move forward, we need to be more resilient in how we approach problems, approach pandemics, approach crises, and be able to constantly adapt. Because if we stand still, the world is going to keep on moving and we're going to be left behind not knowing what to do with ourselves. So I would call on all business owners, small or big, to keep on moving, keep on reinventing, keep on innovating, keep on thinking outside of the box. Take that walk in the park, as Lilly said, and find that piece of wood and let it talk to you. Let it tell you that I want to be Africa, and then make it the Africa that it wants to be, you know. So thank you so much, ladies, first of all, for agreeing to be a part of this. I feel for me it's been great. We hope that we will call on you again another time and we can have more conversations like this. From what we all said, I feel like there's definitely a space for us to talk about what it means like to buy local, to have to promote local services, to be. I know you mentioned in your intro, Wangari, that you're a Pan-Africanist, and I feel like in all of us there is a level of that, and we need to tap into it. Be proud of who we are and what we're producing and who we're making it for, and create the Africa that we want. I know that that is a tagline for for the AU right now, but we all have to contribute towards building the Africa that we want. We can't leave it to one person. It's our responsibility in totality. And given the opportunity right now, let us then build back fairer. Let us try and build back better. Let us be more humanistic. Let us really look out and see how we can support each other's businesses a whole lot more. Okay, so there's there's a lot of comments coming in. As we close, can I just read these last few comments? So Trading for Development says, I would like to invite you to have a similar event via Zoom, okay, Facebook, for the Oxford Fair Trade Coalition. Please send me the email. Okay, we'll do that. And then Wangari Mpofu says, thank you, ladies. Very eye-opening conversation with great takeaways. Thank you, Wangari. And then we also have Tembi Sile. Shout out to Tembi at Drakenstein Municipality. She says, the Drakenstein Municipality team is proud and inspired by you, ladies. Thank you, Tembi. It's been a great time, ladies. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you, and we look forward to having you again. So from me, Musa Mpofu, and the WFTO team, thank you so much for tuning in. And please catch us on the 7th of May, as we'll have another conversation on building back fairer. Thank you, ladies. Have a great Friday and a great weekend further.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What can you, I, we do? Unite to change, empower, lead, and innovate.